Let's go, Marvelous! Let's go get a block! Danny wants one! Anything?
Yeah, talk. Welcome back to Day 3, the first match, the third day of the New Zealand Division 1 Mixed Ultimate Championships. Here we have Marvelous DC versus AUUC Flood, a case of deja vu. This was our first match yesterday. My name is Blue Monroe.
And I'm Kelsey Bielik.
And we will be your eyes and ears on the ground here in less beautiful than yesterday, Hamilton, for the Division 1 New Zealand Mixed Ultimate Championships.
I'm not so sure about that. Less beautiful than yesterday.
Go wide line, go pretty wide.
It's a really flat day in that sense, but the rain is coming down, so, you know, it is
Yes, go,
playing Ultimate Frisbee. If you prefer the wins in Marvelous DC's case, you're talking to Coach before he mentions that the lack of wind could be a bit of an issue.
Nice bang! Take your time! Yes, sir!
Comfortable backhand.
Marvelous DC really starting with this energy, bringing out the power, not just with the score, but with the celebration. The entire team here running on the field for high fives.
The Marvelous DC to go up by 2 against the Flood, playing in blue.
Wind is very, very still, but as you can see, there is quite a lot of rain on the field. It's going to make the discs just a little bit slipperier to catch. It means that both teams need to maintain absolute focus, as sort of luck and dry hands aren't going to be able to put in the extra work.
And we saw before the game, Flood really relishing in that, these wet conditions, true to their name. In the warm-up, they were throwing bids on the line, just everyone on the team laying out to catch the throws that their teammates were putting up. You know, if it wasn't into their hands, they were laying out in the grass to reach out to grab that disc. Meanwhile, Marvelous DC really focusing on the communication. We're hearing chatter saying, hey guys, remember, communicate with each other. You know, when conditions are less than ideal, we need to be supporting each other in every way, and that involves, you know, taking care of the easy stuff. Who's got the disc? Talk to your teammates.
Marvelous DC with a big pull. Fielded by Campbell Jordan. Swinging to the near sideline to find Chong. Big Fake trying to open up that space. An unforced error from the Flood. An unforced error by Flood, giving Marvelous DC an opportunity for another quick point on the board.
We've got Robertson to Weatherall, her second point of the day. She throws the disc up in celebration. She's happy to be here right now.
It looks like the rest of the Marvelous DC side are happy to be here as well. Reminder that they did play against Flood yesterday. The scoreline went heavily in favor of Marvelous DC. Flood off a ripper of a game. Fantastic performance to beat Hoodie Putty, one of the dark horses of the tournament, but Flood to have taken them out in the quarterfinals on Universe point no less, 15-14, really digging deep, showing a completely different side to the team than we saw in their previous performance against Flood, Marvelous DC. And so the question really remains, which Flood are we going to see today?
You know, I'm not sure, and we were talking to Coach Ethan Taylor about this earlier. We saw Nicholas Whitlock yesterday really bringing out the fire. Flood as a team pulled back. You know, Hoodie Putty was in the lead. They pulled back and took it to Universe line to take the win. We saw a lot of talent, you know, players looking for the specific receivers, while Hoodie Putty focusing on more collective teamwork across the field. We really saw Whitlock carrying the team, Hayes getting in there, big players showing their dominance on the field. So as Taylor was mentioning, the coach, he mentioned we're trying to carry that momentum into today. Which Flood are we going to see? You know, jury's out. Marvelous DC is up in the moment, but Flood, I'm sure, trying to dig deep and find that space where they were making those connections. They had that fire, that tenacity to bring it back, win on Universe Point, trying to give Marvelous DC a similar game, similar run for their money.
Marvelous DC, another point to come out on defense. Now, we've seen quite a few games this tournament start off this way, one team seeming to dominate with a series of unanswered breaks, but nothing is certain in Ultimate Frisbee, despite Marvelous DC's long history of success, their undefeated run in the tournament so far. Nothing is decided until the last point is scored. And we've seen several teams make impressive comeback attempts, just narrowing very, very wide margins.
And you guys might be picking up, hearing a bit of that energy from Marvelous DC on the sideline as they're trying to lift up their teammates on the field. You know, always good to keep that going. Marvelous DC really has come out with fire. They've come out with energy. So great to see the sideline here also picking them up and carrying that as well. Pull comes up by Hamilton. And Van Turnout on the racehorse, getting down to the field to set that mark.
Chong swings the disc to Whitlock on the far sideline, finding Steph Shen recenters, but a nice, very, very strong bid by Peter Hoban.
Takes to the skies there.
Riley Van Turnhout, one of the confident throwers on the Marvelous DC line. The man who's got the distance is winding something up. Impressive mark by Chong, but he gets one away anyway. Finds Waller right in the red zone, near sideline now.
And Rollman's making the same look she made earlier, open side. Going instead to Anna Crosby for the points. Now also talking to the players before the game, it sounds like they're really, Marvelous DC, they have big expectations for the day. You know, every team here at this level is looking for the win. They're looking at getting to the finals. And Marvelous DC at this point, they've got their deep roster, but they're looking at really playing across their whole roster in this game. Specifically, they're saving legs. They want everyone to have equal playing time. They really have high hopes moving forward, and they want to keep the whole team warm and the whole team fresh. Which leads me to another point, really important to focus on that third day of the tournament. It's a bit cold, and so keeping the muscles fresh and keeping them warm is important to avoid injury.
And that is an interesting point to make, considering that when Marvelous DC played off against Space Invaders yesterday, Space Invaders took half, putting up an impressive series of points and really putting Marvelous DC on the back foot, at which point Marvelous DC really focused their attention on getting some of those key players to take maybe more points. And really, Flood, we want to see whether or not Flood can push them to do the same. If they can force them to really create a lean Marvelous DC line to fight back against them. And again, on the third day of the tournament, with potentially another match still to play after this, it really is a delicate balance between winning the game and making sure that you have enough energy to fight through the second game.
Absolutely, definitely important to include that into the strategy. Now, great D by Sam Wong.
Just a monster hand block. Again, still in the red zone, Neal. A nice leading forehand pass to the far sideline.
Into the safe hands of Robertson.
So the score now 5-0 in favor of Marvelous DC.
You know, when I was mentioning earlier that DC is seeing the rain a bit more as an equalizer with this game, with their depth of throwing experience, I think they were really relishing in those windy conditions, knowing that regardless of that 8th defender on the field, they could move it competently. Whereas with newer players, you know, potentially on Flood, you've got the speed and you have the awareness, but if your throws aren't quite there, the wind can really make it more difficult to play Frisbee. So with the lack of wind and rain here instead, it's an exciting chance to see what all the players across Flood can do with their throws to help bring up their team. We've got a timeout called. Looks like Flood is taking a bit of time to regroup. Looking at the score, 5-0, what can they do? What can we do on offense? What's not working? And what can we do to score the point, to see the disc into the hands of one of those Flood players in the end zone and get on the scoreboard?
Well, it really is a great opportunity to look at the last few points and wonder what has gone wrong for Flood so far. So we've seen a couple of sort of initiation passes off the pull, just 1-2 passes into the offense. Maybe a little bit of field blindness, the Flood players not seeing poached players or not seeing how aggressive Marvelous DC are coming down on defense. They really are going to need to start looking at what is allowing Marvelous DC to dominate in this game. And we've seen 3 of their points so far, or 4 I believe, go straight to the ladies. So it's the mixed Ultimate Championships. There are men and women taking the stage and competing as equals on the field. The team that is going to use their sort of both genders better is going to be the one that puts on the more impressive performance today. So it really is up to Flood now to figure out how do we isolate those impressive scoring females on the Marvelous DC line. How do we stop them from doing that? How do we convert that into scores of our own?
Absolutely. And I think what's important here, recognizing the turnovers and what Marvelous DC has been doing successfully on defense, I think a good warm-up plays into this, but we've been seeing their players run down full speed to the other end of the field. And that can be just as important as the pull. You know, getting a good pull down there is really nothing if you don't have the players getting on the racehorse, getting down there as fast as they can to stop the first few throws from making those yards back up the field. It's important to answer that with pressure. So we've seen Van Turnhout getting down there and really applying pressure to the mark. And within those first few throws, as you've mentioned, Flood has been unable to continue because I think of that pressure Marvelous DC is putting on right away, reading the space and forcing it into the poached players on defense.
Yeah, defense does start with the pull. You're looking for one big long throw that ends with the disc touching down in a position where the defense has a great opportunity to set. Now a little bit slower on the chase this time. So Campbell, Jordan and Lee able to start some initiation, working with the momentum.
We're seeing Franson back there as well as the third handler.
Marvelous DC coming down in a zone, but they're chipped through, finding Charlesworth on the far sideline.
And we've got Zoe on the wide side, two Flood players deep, stretching Stevenson as the deep.
Peter Boardman and Kate Charlesworth, the owner of the dog, who is the team mascot, just working this through that Marvelous DC zone. Lee looking for support. It's not enough, but we see Kiefter getting involved.
That was a great outside in forehands throw. And again, this is a case in point example. The conditions are less windy, and if you're throwing higher throws like that in the winds, it's going to take them away. However, as it's more dead, we can see Flood really working the disc beautifully here. These quick passes that they were struggling with a little bit more against Marvelous DC yesterday, resulting in a point. They're on the scoreboard.
And that really is what we want to see. Now, Kate Charlesworth was one of the key players in that offense, just getting every second or third touch as Peter Boardman and Lucien Lee just keep working through. Involving the ladies is what is going to dictate a mixed ultimate victory. And we've got the first piece of evidence there for Flood. As soon as they start really getting those hungry, aggressive lady players on their field involved, giving them the disc, trusting them to get it back and to receive it on the next pass, that allows them to just chip away at the armor of Marvelous DC and put a great first score on the board.
And we've got the whole team celebrating there. Looks like they've got some fans over on the side as well with that big microphone there. They're holding around yesterday, giving the players opportunities to speak within the huddle. Always helpful to have spectators on the sideline supporting your team. You know, having that extra support can really help boost energy, boost efforts, especially in days like today when the weather is less than ideal.
So Flood, to come down on defense now, and we have said the defense starts with the pull, but just as important is making sure that there's a huge chase. 1, 2 of your players just booking it downfield, trying to get into position to stop that first throw. That first throw, as we saw when Flood just scored, allowed them to establish that momentum. They walked up. That was a perfect point. Marvelous DC, despite a great zone defense, didn't get a single touch on that disc.
And we're seeing a really tall line from Marvelous DC here. Bit of a short pull, and Neil running over to the disc to capitalize on that. To center it to Soper. And she is ripping it! Looking for one of those players deep. Rollman comes down with it.
Great pressure on defense by Lamb. Has to go back to Haberfield.
And a really wide cup here.
Just great disc movement by Marvelous DC. Great around throws.
Ooh.
Haberfield with a drop under pressure in the zone.
And I think that's really what we're going to see more of in these rainy conditions. He caught that disc, and I think in dry conditions, you know, that would have been safe in his hands with the friction there. And the rain just making it that little bit more difficult to hold on to the throw.
Elliot Hayes, one of the defensive powerhouses, got a great bid by the DC Weatherall.
Yeah, she's really going to punish you. If you're slowing down when attacking the frisbee there, Weatherall with the bookends. Little bobble, she holds onto that slippery disc.
Just a great play by Marvelous DC. Flood going up on the board, DC deciding not to let that one go unanswered. They had great disc movement, just very precise controlled throws. We saw Aaron Neal send a nice around, receive a nice around forehand from Soper. Put one a little bit long. Haverfield wasn't able to pull it down. But again, that instant mental switch from offense back to defense. Wetherall with a great bid for the score.
And you know what? When you are on offense like that, you've got an open undercut and you can feel that separation. It can be easy to slip into slowing down to see the disc into your hands. However, you know, it does open up the opportunity for the defense. And in Wetherall's case, she's got the drive and the energy to drive through like that. She's notorious for the layout tees, and it can get in your mind when you're on offense and someone has layout teed you. They come out of nowhere. Obviously, if you saw them coming, you'd attack it a bit faster, and it can get in your mind and make it a bit more intimidating to make those clean cuts. So we'll see how that impacts the offensive line here, or the women, you know, when there's that strong defensive player coming through.
And so that is one of the first lessons MDC put up on the chalkboard. If you put on the brakes, we will pour on the brakes. DC to come out on defense now. Robertson, high angle pull. It's got a lot of legs to it. Chong looking to field.
And again, everyone on the team here booking it down. We've got a cup here, so they're pressuring the throws over the top, safe into the hands of Moore.
Moore big and open. Hazel Yu underneath it. Huge pressure from Waller.
Quickly closing that gap. You know, he left that open, but he trusted himself. He said, you know, that player can stay there because I know I can catch up, and that he did.
Just an impossible athlete, that Ben Waller. Robertson marked out by Chong, a low release. And Waller with separation again.
Sam Wong is just hungry for this deep look. Now she's looking for the under, opening up the space instead for, Olivia Judd, that's right, just couldn't come down with it. Those one-handed catches just slightly more difficult again in these wet conditions.
Good defensive positioning as well from Jenny Ling, who receives the disc now on the near sideline. Integral to applying the pressure that led to that turnover and an opportunity for Flood. Just nice lateral disc movement, trying to work it. Sam Wong hungry for the D.
And interesting with the zone here, we're seeing one mark and then two on the side, on either side, and that's just making the downfield looks that much harder, forcing the swings to the side of the field. And when there's no crosswind breeze, there's no high side or low side, so not forcing to either direction is not the worst decision. Centering to the middle of the field. And
Sam Wong, great read on that disc.
Robertson looking to Waller. Great footwork there to keep it inbound, sees it into his hands.
Just walking that one in. It's now 7-1. 1 point away from Marvelous DC taking half. Looking to establish a repeat of yesterday's performance against Flood. Flood, a long game ahead of them if they want to come back and take their spot in the finals.
We see Whitlock walking onto the field here, no doubt thinking about his performance yesterday and how he can draw on that and carry that momentum here and show Marvelous DC, you know, really contest the skies, you know, show the throws, you know, the deep set of throws he has and the arsenal in the back pocket there, to really show what he has and give them the game that he knows he can.
Marvelous DC to come out on defense again.
We've got big cheers from both sidelines supporting both teams now. This energy makes for a really, really exciting space to be in. We've got Hamilton with the disc, just wiping it off, trying to keep it a bit more dry so he can have a bit more grip on that pull. Launch it just a little bit farther.
The rain coming down a little bit heavier now, but the pull still just pinpoint accuracy fielded by Jordan. A cold drop with a great opportunity. Again, the importance of the rain in conditions like this.
Van Turnhout is signaling to his team, guys, get down here. You're not getting down here to play defense. We need to clear the space for the ISO. in our end zone. Looks like Roman is that ISO.
Sofa back to
signals.
Waller.
She wants the dump and to a clean point. Hamilton with the great pull.
Despite a great bid by Rory Moore.
Definitely props to that defensive play there as well.
And that really is one of the perils, as you mentioned, in dry conditions, just as we saw Liam Haberfield with an uncharacteristic drop in the end zone, that little bit of extra moisture, the wetness of the disc, it's going to cause problems. A pull that would have ordinarily been fielded fine in these conditions, a crucial turnover for Flood as Marvelous DC take the first half 8-1. And so up until this point, we've seen this the same Flood Marvelous DC matchup that we had yesterday morning. Will Flood be able to use this timeout to dig deep, to bring out the kind of game, the ferocity that we saw them put on display against Huripari to take them into the semi-final? It is Rainy Hamilton, the clash in Kirikiriroa, the first game of the third day, the final day of the New Zealand Division 1 Mixed Ultimate Championships. My name is Blair Monroe.
And I'm Kelsey Bielik.
And we will be back with you soon. So we are back for the second half of this, the rematch in our semi-finals. Marvelous DC, the AUUC Flood. Marvelous DC playing in white on the left-hand side of your screen, Flood in blue on the right-hand side of your screen. My name is Blair Monroe.
And I'm Kelsey Bielik.
And the question on everybody's minds is, are we going to see a repeat? Marvelous DC had a convincing victory over Flood. Flood managed to pull it back in some later games and really put on a great performance, but we haven't seen that Flood side from them yet. Are we going to see it in the...
She's pulling out the bids, the layouts, scoring the points. From Flood, we've seen some great movement that we were getting on our feet for. And the teamwork is really nice.
Oh, an injury called. So Robertson with a run-through giving Marvelous DC possession. But we've seen a tumble taken.
And it can be dangerous. Everything's just a little bit more dangerous. On top of that, as it's a little bit colder, as we mentioned in the very beginning, muscles are also a little bit colder, which can lead to increased chance of injury.
And that's Stephanie Shen, number 14 for the AUC Flood, having to be carried off the field by players. Absolutely heartbreaking to see.
Great to see players from both teams really taking care of her, pitching in.
It is a Stephanie for CC being afforded an opportunity to substitute. They will do one of their own. It looks like Troy Stevenson for Marvelous DC will be substituting for Liam Haverfield, number 37.
And bit cheeky there, I think Haverfield was the one who said, "Bro, I want to play."
Back in the red zone, we know he's got the throws to put them there. Pressure from Patterson. Robertson with a nice undercut, getting separation to allow him to retain possession. A nice
great mark there was that Jordan. Great mark there, shutting off the round looks. Robertson was looking for that reset, and Jordan just responding with every fake everywhere he was looking, seeing his eyes and what Robertson wanted to throw and adjusting, forcing that open side look. Just really great intensity on the mark there. And also not biting on the open side, which can be dangerous to do when you're on the mark. You see the disc coming up, you see what they're going to do, and you feel the pressure, you know, you just want to stop it. But jumping over to the open side can leave that break side vulnerable. And he...
Most defensive marking off against the offensive receivers, looking to take away the other half. You cannot take away everything on defense. The important thing is trust your team to take away what you cannot. Flood to come out on offense now.
And they are hyped. And I'm excited to see what Flood has in store here. Hopefully a repeat of that beautiful point they scored in the first half. That great teamwork, that great movement and flow. We're seeing Marvelous DC coming down in a zone, giving them that opportunity to, give us a repeat show. That the beautiful swing passes, that teamwork.
And again, it's the same kind of connections that we're seeing. Number 13, Aiden Elliott, a little bit of edge.
Ooh.
Definite contact there.
Before Kim could get a word in there, Neil says, foul, no contest, you know, did not mean to hit you.
Boardman calling safe now, letting Elliott know, just widen up the tunnel vision. We've got the full width of the field to play with.
Great movement from Flood here, directing traffic here. Oh, and that is... Unsurprisingly, we're going to see that with the wet disc. We were just talking about this at half. With that friction, you need to hold it just a little bit tighter when you release.
People getting underneath it. Despite a great attempt by Boardman, Robertson brings that one down for the score, taking it to 10-1 in favor.
Team really is releasing the disc. Make a decisive, you know, clinical decision for an open player, but when the players on the field are moving the disc too fast, it can be really difficult to respond. Unfortunately, Flood come out with a bit more of that. They've been making this beautiful movement. Seeing all the players on the team, it's really a different style of play. I mean, given the conditions, and they're also adapting to the zone that's being thrown on them. We're seeing so many players on the field touching the disc, able to move it, and
for a comeback, still potential for a great match. We've seen it all weekend. Teams conceding deficits and coming back to surprise upsets. Elliott, Lee, Boardman initiating that handler offense against that zone we're seeing from MDC again.
And again, this zone is, we're seeing a cup coming around and forcing it a certain direction. It's relatively flat, and they're forcing the swings, making that much easier and stopping any downfield looks.
And just that pressure causing an overthrow despite keep
happening.
Peter Hoban's foot speed allowing him to get the disc back to the side of the field for Hamilton.
Rollman in the space she loves at the front of the cone there in the corner of that end zone.
Swinging back to Ben Turnhout to Hoban. Just bouncing the disc off number 69 for the DC line, Riley Van Turnhout, for a great score. Peter Hoban as we go 11-1. Marvelous DC up as they were yesterday against the AUUC Flood.
And again, Marvelous DC, when they've got this movement, it's so hard to stop any team, you know, not just them. When they're moving the disc so quickly, adjusting on defense and shutting down your player can just be a little bit more difficult to do. Also, did it look like Marvelous DC called the timeout here?
I'm not sure. Well, both teams probably have good cause to call a timeout. AUUC Flood, 10 points down, a great opportunity. What do we need to do to play the way that we did yesterday afternoon? What about Marvelous DC? What do you think they're talking about?
Revisit that in a moment. Because I want to say Flood definitely has the pieces. They have everything they need to unlock the zone that's being thrown on them right now. It's just a matter of executing like they did in that first point, which was so beautiful to get them on the board. Now moving over again, thank you to Marvelous DC. What are they talking about? I think they're just taking this time to regroup. They have a comfortable lead, I would say. And so this time is providing them just to come back together as a team. They're feeling good. Probably revisiting let's not the game by continuing to play our best. No, there's a threat for a deep look when the disc is in the hands of anyone on this line.
Marvelous DC really looking 1-2 passes ahead, seeing those swings open up the field and recognizing I'm not going to get this disc. I need to get myself in position to find the next one.
Streaking deep and also clearing under where we saw Hamilton, for example, getting those yards on that under look, which was more of a midfield look. So clearing out the space for their teammates to run into it. So we're seeing them now throwing a zone, and I do really like this zone. Very different, as I was saying, from the cups we were seeing yesterday where there's so much pressure around the disc. What a catch.
Lamb exploding from the ground. Great big stretch to widen that one up. Ling goes up for it. Massive bids just shifting that DC zone, opening something up.
So I think what they're trying to do now with this zone is instead of forcing the disc in that wind, they're making it difficult with those deeper throws. Not the case there, where Whitlock is getting creative again and finding the players dropping the frisbee right on top of them.
Great gains upfield by Flood. Just exhibiting that creativity, that unconventional, just explosive play to work around the DC's structured zone.
And Flood really showing also that they're comfortable with the disc in the air. We're seeing all these players taking the disc high, which is great, even when it's not under attack, that they're attacking it to make sure it's safely in their hands. And wow, we see Patterson. Oh.
Great threaded shot. Patterson receiving from Chong.
There we go, making that look into the end zone. Great to see Chong also just dominating that offensive play.
Oh. Patterson not grabbing the score there. Haberfield to center the DC offense.
May have been a ground strip there. Great catch, but couldn't hold on to it on the ground.
Hoban to Hamilton. A high one. Great! Oh, great bid by Whitlock, but it looks like a strip has been called.
Players taking a moment to regroup.
So just a reminder for those watching at home, this is a self-officiated sport, so players take it upon themselves to resolve any calls or disputes on the field, just communicating using their own rules of knowledge, and just their sort of sense of each other, their sense of their themselves, their team, and just communicating to try, asking for the video ref. But again, a self-officiated sport means that players must resolve this by themselves.
I think they were asking for a replay there. Could anyone bring a replay forward? Unfortunately, not the case. No, you can't facilitate that. Maybe with the comments from home, if you're loud enough, they'll be able to hear it on the field. What do you guys think?
So an uncontested strip, meaning Robertson will retain possession, marked by Whitlock.
And again, we're seeing that deep look off every possession. Haberfield hungry for it.
Patterson, despite the ground strip before, gets back into position, goes up over the top of Haberfield.
Climbing the ladder there. Again, Flood really displaying their confidence in the air across the team.
This is the kind of Flood team we wanted to see in this game. Really pushing MDC despite a great defensive zone that we're seeing.
It's starting to get spicy. It's strange to see here. They've got a lot of players in the deep space, but there's this massive hole in the middle of the field. Oh, it's a transition. We've got Marvelous DC on offense.
Uncharacteristic drop by Ling, who's had great hands up until this point. DC threading it through.
Ooh.
Despite a monster bid.
Morris, he saw that coming and he wanted to get there. Unfortunately, the bid wasn't quite enough.
And that's Hamilton with the score, taking us to 12-1. The game drawing to a close. Flood displaying the kind of intensity we'd love to see from the start of this game.
It's starting to get exciting. You know, Flood is, they really are. They're showing us the frisbee that we really want to be watching. They're keeping it spicy. It's getting entertaining.
Just throwing something new into the mix, the kind of frisbee that got them to the semifinals in the first place. We didn't see a lot of it in the second half, but now we're mixing things up. We're seeing a better use of their women than in previous games. They're having their ladies back as handlers, providing that extra support, maybe not with the same destructive bombing power of Whitlock or Moore, but still very confident throws, great hands receiving those swing passes. And rather than just looking to reset straight back to one of those power throws, they're still taking the time to look downfield themselves. Can I progress this up the field? And despite great defensive pressure from Marvelous DC, they're not able to stop those swings back. So Flood doing a great job of retaining possession. It's just an uncharacteristic error. And the impossible ability of the Marvelous DC side to capitalize on those errors.
You know, one thing I'm really enjoying is that while Marvelous DC is famous for their clinical offense, their clinical defense, they're well drilled, and they have experience, I'm excited to see Flood's really starting to get creative in their response, and I think that settling into that creative style play, the whole team, you know, not afraid to drop, you know, creative throws over the top, add some zest to things, and keep it, you know, keep it different, keep it interesting against the classic style that Marvelous DC is playing.
Yeah. We're seeing again Peter Boardman, Kate Charlesworth, Lucien Lee initiating that handler offense, working around that zone. Peter Boardman center field gets one across the near sideline to Connor Kiefter.
3 of Flood's women deep, really keeping Stevenson the deep on his toes.
And that really is one of the perils, is that as a deep player defensively, you can't cover everything. 2 deep strikes. Slight overthrow, Troy Stevenson to field. As I was saying, when you have one of those defensive players flooding that space, forcing them to commit to one or the other, can really do a great job of opening up deep offensive options. We might see that here. Claire Gibson sending one far sideline to Troy Stevenson.
Great break throw. A lot of separation there.
Straight to the hands of Kiefter.
Nommed right up.
Initiating a quick offense. DC struggling to reestablish that zone. Sunny Zoe, despite a great bid from the Birdman.
Also, props for keeping that clean. Oh, sees it into the end zone. What a point.
Great score by Flood. Lucien Lee just outside of Waller's circle of influence. A great score, just working that disc slowly. Great defensive positioning to generate that turn. A couple of quick 1-2 meter passes to initiate some momentum. Building and building. You cannot stop the Flood on a point like that.
And it's great to see. That's the type of offense that says, you know, when you turn it over, we're going to punish those mistakes. What a point. We're going to maintain possession, and we're going to make those clean passes and hit the open player, running onto it in the end zone there. Marvelous DC again with just a second behind with a layout from Stevenson, really giving it all in the end zone to catch up, but couldn't quite get there. Again, punishing those mistakes.
And so Flood certainly chuffed with themselves after that great effort. They're starting to recognize the kind of ultimate that they can play through this Marvelous DC zone. It might force Marvelous DC to have to change things up to arrest that momentum that the Flood are trying to build in the second half of the game. But again, the peril is that Marvelous DC's offense is well drilled. It's like a fine scalpel, just seeking to pick apart any defensive that's offered thrown down on them.
Pull comes up. Soper with the disc. Looks like a person defense. And I think they're running a pull play here. Looks like out of the side stack.
Peter versus Peter. Hoban gets around Boardman.
Rollman to center.
Haberfield, a big thrower on the DC line. Sopit getting free despite good coverage by Stephanie Franson.
Great around pass. Disc in the safe hands of Neil.
Threading one through to Rollman again.
The run, the break! The break! The break!
Oh, and punishing the break side of the field there. You know, and that's what's so difficult on defense is once the disc gets to the break side, it can be so difficult to get back into position on defense. And again, that's Marvelous DC showing that they can really threaten that with the throws, that the marks need to be honest and they need to be intense to stop that, because otherwise, you know, once the disc is on the break side, it's really easy to just move it down the field, and scoring the point there.
And Kelsey, we talked about that before, the importance we saw down on the a few points ago now. Campbell Jordan really applying pressure, not biting on that open side, so using his body to close off half the field, trusting the other defenders to prevent the DC cutters from attacking the side of the field that Campbell Jordan is leaving open. And that creates an open side where the disc is intended to be thrown to, and the break side, which is on the opposite side of the mark. So as you say, once you've got the disc on the break side, all of your defenders are out of position. They are on the opposite side of the player to the disc, and it makes it really hard to reposition to make an attacking bid to generate those turns that Flood desperately need as the game goes 13-2 in favor of Marvelous DC. And
you know, when you're looking at defense like that, what they might be talking about, revisiting that, what didn't work so well on defense, how did they generate that point? You can always break down person defense into two errors. Either there's an error on the mark and the offense was able to break the mark, or there was an error downfield and the defenders managed to get open, the offense managed to get open on that open side that the defenders downfield are working to shut down, which is why forcing can be so beneficial. You know, you've got 50% of the defense on the mark and 50% downfield. So right now I'm sure they're probably revisiting that, saying, hey guys, let's remember to keep our marks clean, remember the force, don't bite on those open side looks, and stop the around throws, stop the break side looks. You know, when you're the mark, you're 50% of the defense, and we need to support our teammates downfield by keeping that honest.
The wind starting to pick up just a little bit from the right side of your screen to the left, the rain coming down just that little bit heavier. Again, a massive leveler. We were talking during halftime about what kind of impact the rain can really have as it softens the ground. It's a great leveler for speed, as those explosive players that we're seeing on both sides just have to take that little bit of extra second, some of the energy going into the ground instead of going into acceleration.
Rain coming down a bit heavier too, yeah, and Flood, they're really in their element right now. Can bring that energy out of the huddle. Marvelous DC also, you know, hailing from Wellington, probably used to these conditions as well.
So Flood coming out on offense, fielded by Chong. Safe hands, Campbell Jordan.
So it looks like Marvelous DC is running the same zone.
Great shot to an open Hazel Yu, looking for a reset to Chong.
She locked in those dump eyes with Chong there. I see you and I'm going to throw it to you.
Despite great pressure from Robertson, Whitlock has the disc in the danger zone on the far sideline now.
Looking for a massive swing across the field.
To Lee, back to Campbell Jordan.
Great movements in the zone right now for Flood. They're really making those connections, keeping the cup moving.
Oh my goodness!
Whitlock with a high angle.
Oh, just off the hands of Hazel.
Just a great Hazel Yu, number 83 for the AUC Flood, doing a great job of getting open, allowing Flood to work the disc upfield, but Marvelous DC with an opportunity now. Aaron Neal center field.
Not much movement happening. There we see Wong coming out of the stack. Not as many opportunities. Now we've got deep look coming off.
Great disc movement by Marvelous DC, sending up the long shot. Double coverage, Moore is closing. Not enough.
Take in the air, under pressure by Roman. Also a great throw by Neil. He really recognized what she needed, you know, where she was going to be in the space to get that throw. Could have potentially led her a little bit more with that, but, you know, with safe hands like that, trusting her in the air, she's really dominating the offense right now.
Campbell Jordan applying great defensive pressure, forcing Robertson to a high stall count, having to thread an inside forehand out. Stewart now, nice floaty up towards Robertson, but in that corner marked by the aggressive Jordan, a wobbly disc but kept alive by Sam Wong.
And Wong has been looking to complete that. She's been looking to finish up that point. We see her hungry for these deep looks, and while it may not have gone up deep to her, She cleaned it up in the end zone, scoring the points. It may have been a shorter pass, but she got it in the end zone where she wanted ultimately.
Huge pressure from Flood on defense. You could see towards the end of that Marvelous DC were looking a little bit more panicked. They didn't have that same composure they did when they were working from their defensive half. They could feel the pressure from the Flood coming on. Campbell Jordan, in particular, number 36 in the blue, are playing just fantastic defensive intensity on that mark, shutting down so many things, so agile, so squirrely, just looking to shut down as much of the field as possible. MDC still able to walk away with it, but the stability on that last throw was not there, and that kind of indicates that Flood might be getting into the Marvelous DC heads a little bit. The score, 14-2. Marvelous DC only 1 point away from a great repeat victory for them.
It would be the same score, looking at closing it out, ending the game sooner so they can warm up, hydrate, maybe get under some shelter. Flood, in the meantime, looking to hold on. If there's any point for them to really turn the tide, this is it.
Robertson again with the disc. Possibly the last pull for Marvelous DC until the final. Oh, Neil with the disc.
Neil with the disc?
I think they might have swapped hats. Lee to Whitlock. Van Turnhout with a great chase down as Marvelous DC set up that zone.
Really deep here. The Flood players, now they're coming in to fill that space, but we're seeing a lot of open space in the middle of the field.
Rory Moore, a second bite to keep it. Lee with receiving a big swing across field, really trying to spread that zone from DC.
Flood players really just pushing deep. Hazel Yu in the end zone now.
Over the top of the zone now to Lee. Resets to Patterson. A nice, comfortable gainer for the Flood lines.
And the Cup managing to stop those connection throws. We had 2 players deep, and they definitely recognized that. Flood stretching the field.
Quick swing across to Lee in the danger zone.
And Flood holding on to it, holstering it, instead choosing the safer swing passes.
Ella Lamb, Whitlock under a lot of pressure, but gets the disc anyway, despite great effort by Riley Van Turnhout. Sends a big one cross field. Hazel Yu.
Just through the fingers. And whether that was the rain or just a little bit of defensive pressure, not sure. Regardless, it did result in the turnover there.
Aaron Neal in that corner, marked out by Rory Moore, trying to stop that shown throw.
Oh.
Low forehand to Van Turnhout, big fake, shifting Whitlock out of position.
Just went deep to try to help out with what he thought was a huck, it looked like.
Hogan on the far sideline, unmarked by Flood players, able to work back with Riley Van Turnhout.
Who's now caught up with his defensive player, Whitlock.
A great point by both teams. Aaron Neal with a big crossfield shot.
Leading pass to Gibson. Couldn't quite come down with it.
An opportunity for a layout, but maybe smarter decision to keep the bodies intact, considering Marvelous DC have a lead that they can hold on to.
And that is a good point. While it's always great to see bids, people going 100% to the disc, it's also good to remember that right now, even if you could do that, potentially making a safer play, especially with the cushion that Marvelous DC has, could be better for the games in the future and yes, keeping the body intact for the rest of the tournament.
Flood, again, their work cut out for them, but that same crisp disc movement, we've seen them work. A big rip from Lee. Hazel Yu again open in the deep space.
And she's been wanting that deep look, hanging out deep. Neil recognized that, really aware of his surroundings and running over easily, coming in with a hand in the way.
Just a great close by Neil, that foot speed that defines the pace and play style of Marvelous DC. Hoban, center field, marked by Moore, gets one out to the unmarked Van Turnhout, keeping working up the far sideline to Gibson again. Judd, sorry. Great fake, causing a bid by Ella Lamb. The disc continues. Anna Crosby not able to get it. It looks like contact may have been made or a call.
Not sure. You may be injured. And great hand signals on the field. Everyone responding. Hope she's doing all right. Sad to see, maybe it's the cold weather, another injury from Flood. you choosing to stay on the field.
Let's go, Riley!
Not quite sure what happened there. Maybe she just needed an extra second. And they're indicating that there is a turnover.
So great disc movement by Marvelous DC. Despite the call being made, it didn't have an impact on the play. Flood are going to regain possession. Whitlock looking to pick up on the far sideline. The wind having largely died down, it's just heavy rain, and so the question is, what are Flood going to do to work around?
Starting out a bit deep, but they're utilizing these handlers. Quick over the top pass.
Patterson to Whitlock. Great undercut by Lee on the near sideline. Finds the other Lee.
And there's another call. Oh, looks like Crosby's saying that it may have been out of bounds. Didn't quite see on the sideline there if she was in bounds or out of bounds. Or maybe it was travel. I think she's calling it out.
So Flood back on defense. MDC looking to close out this point of the game, to close out the game itself.
Neil calmly walking up to the disc.
Marked by the long arms of the blue bomber, Nicholas Whitlock. We haven't seen those big shots from him that we did against the Hoodie Putty. Maybe a bit more conservative in the rain.
And Judd has really been making movements. She's been initiating so many cuts, and there she is looking for the disc again. Hungry for that deep shot. Neil seeing her coming under. Not quite the separation that he'd like to see. Choosing instead to swing. Always a safe option.
Great defense on display by Flood.
And Flood's really biting down on the defense here. Marvelous DC struggling to make some open looks, really get the separation that the handlers are comfortable throwing to. Crosby manages to get there.
Back to Hoban.
And you know, if you're ever going to lock down on the defense, on the person defense, this is the space to do it, right on the end zone line. Flood showing that, you know, you're in a dangerous area, but we're not just going to give this point to you. We're here and we're fighting. Massive around throw to turn out one-handed catch.
Great.
And
There by
that's
Patterson.
the second time Van Turnhout has thrown a fake that spun that defense around,
Use the force, Luke.
giving him a wide open field with no force to assist that point, sealing the deal for Marvelous DC.
So a great finish by Marvelous DC, 15-2 against AUUC Flood. Flood applying a bit more pressure than they did in their previous game, but not quite the fire that we saw against Hoodie Putty. Maybe the extra rain helped to dampen those embers a little bit. A great finish for Marvelous DC. We will see them shortly in the finals. But first off, Flood to take the field in the bronze final again shortly against one of HMC or Hamilton Prime as they battle it out in the other semi-final. My name is Blair Monroe.
And I'm Kelsey Bielik.
And this has been the first game of Day 3 of the New Zealand Division 1 Mixed Ultimate Championships. The clash in Kirikiriroa. MDC setting out to prove that not only can they handle the flood, but they are willing to dance in the rain. We will be back soon.